Deputy Majority Leader Gianaris, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Dan.
So the Assembly and the Senate have their one-house budgets out this week. It's basically a rebuttal to what the governor proposed in January, and now you'll negotiate until the end of March when the budget is due. And both the Senate and the Assembly seem pretty aligned on raising taxes on the rich. Meanwhile, Congress has given the state $12.5 billion as part of the latest stimulus package. So tell me why you still want to raise those taxes on the wealthy here in New York.
Well, there's a couple things going on. We had a massive budget gap coming into this process because of the economic shutdown, the slowdown in revenues. So step one was fill the budget gap. The federal aid largely does that. Not entirely, by the way, but largely does that. And then that leaves the remaining gap, but also all the programs that we need to do to help people recover from the pandemic. And so when we talk about rent relief, both for tenants, residential tenants and commercial tenants, that's additional spending that wasn't previously in the budget. When we talk about the help for excluded workers, people who were not eligible for all the federal aid that came to folks over the last year, that's an additional piece as well. When we talk about grants to small businesses to keep them thriving and open, we've lost many of them already. That is additional help that's needed. In addition to the needs that the state always has in the form of education, healthcare, higher education. So there are needs beyond just keeping the budget where it was. So yes, the federal government helps us kind of fill the hole in large part, but there are all these programs we need to implement that require additional revenue. The other thing I would say is that the federal aid is coming once and then it's disappearing. And so all the things that we're going to use that money for, we're trying to come up with sources of revenue that are recurring. So it's not just kicking the can down the road to next year or the year after when we run out of money yet again.
Republicans and some analysts have said over the years that raising taxes on the rich may drive them out of the state. So instead of getting some of their tax revenue, we're getting none of their tax revenue. What would you say to those concerns? It's been one that we've heard for decades now, and obviously we've done some tax increases in the meantime.
Yeah, you put your finger on it. This is the same old complaint we hear every time anyone talks about asking the rich to do more. Over a decade ago, during the Great Recession, when we imposed the millionaire's tax in New York State, we heard the same complaints. And lo and behold, the data doesn't back that up. So you can't just sit there and say this is going to happen without real data to support your claim. And the data shows the opposite. Sure, people leave because people always leave. More people come in. New York has seen a net increase of millionaires in the last decade since we imposed a tax on the high-earning individuals during the Great Recession. So all the information we have goes in the opposite direction. The fact is we've had a tremendous amount of suffering from a huge majority of the population, and we're asking those who earn more than $1 million a year to do more because they actually did well. All the indicators are that the wealthy got even wealthier over the last year. And the fair thing to do is ask them to fund the recovery to get us back to where we would like to be.
So on the other side of the economic scale are people that lost income during the pandemic. And I'm thinking of tenants specifically. You and I have talked about relief for tenants in the form of canceling rent. There are a bunch of different proposals out there, but I'm curious in the one-house budget for the Senate, what kind of relief do you have for tenants? I know it's been a priority for Democrats in the Senate.
Yeah, and this is an exciting proposal in our one house. We had a program back last year which was inadequate. It was $100 million in relief. The problem is so much more vast than that. The way to apply was very burdensome for the tenants, so many weren't even doing it. But in the one house, we have an excess of $2.3 billion for rent relief, which just about covers the rent arrears that are estimated to exist throughout the state. And so we could pay all outstanding rent with this program if it appears in the final budget. And so that would not only help the tenants who owe money, but then the landlords would be receiving that money. So rather than just saying no one has to pay, we're paying it for them. That way the small landlords get their money, they get to keep paying their mortgages and their utilities, and hopefully people stay in their homes and we get back to a more normal state of play.
You know, the governor's office has been not so keen on tax hikes for the rich and not so keen on canceling rent. And I know that they've wanted to provide rent relief, but I'm wondering in terms of the dynamics, do you think because of the investigation surrounding the governor this year, do you think that's going to make the budget easier for you guys because the governor may want to make more concessions, or do you think it'll make it harder because there's just not as much communication?
Well, it remains to be seen. This is an unprecedented situation. What I can tell you is both the Senate and the Assembly are working hard to be in sync. These one-house proposals are closer together than any I've ever seen in my time in the legislature. We were talking with our colleagues in the other house, as we developed our plans. So to the extent we can come forward with a unified approach, that can only help. We don't know what level of engagement the governor is going to have. We don't know if the governor is going to be around at the end of the month, to be honest. Many of us have called for his resignation already. So what we are doing is focusing on the need to get something done as it relates to the budget. We have a great negotiating partner in the Assembly. Now that the one houses are done, we'll see what kind of engagement we get from the executive.
So let's talk about that. The Assembly has opened an impeachment investigation now. If they do move forward with impeachment, the Senate would then hold a trial where the governor would either be acquitted or convicted. Do you have any sense right now in the Senate in terms of how people feel about a conviction for impeachment? In other words, if the trial was held tomorrow, do you think that he would be convicted by the Senate?
Well, I want to be careful because we would be sitting in judgment of what impeachment articles the Assembly would pass. And until that happens, I don't know what exactly specifically we would be judging. We obviously know what scandals are being reported on a regular basis. We know what the Attorney General is investigating. But I don't want to prejudge something that I might be asked to look at down the road. But what I can tell you is we have a vast majority of the Senate that has already deemed the governor unfit at this time, calling for his resignation. A very large majority of the Democrats in the Senate, and I believe all the Republicans would be there. And so that gives you an indication of how the Senate views things.
I imagine this is going to be a tough situation if the governor does not resign and he's not impeached, because the majority of Democrats in the legislature have called on him to step aside in some form. If he stays in office and he doesn't leave before the end of his term next year, do you see a future where Democrats in the legislature can effectively work with the governor?
So much of this is unprecedented. It's hard to say. Right now, the Assembly is having an impeachment investigation. They can decide to pass an impeachment article or not, and then it would come to us in the Senate. I'm trying to focus on what's in our control right now, and we're trying to get a budget done in the next 2 weeks. If this drags on longer than that, obviously the Attorney General's investigation is going to come forward. There are other law enforcement entities that are aware of some of these allegations. There may be other allegations. We don't know, because every day brings another development. I guess it's a long way of saying I'm not really sure long-term how we're going to deal with this, or if we would need to deal with it, but we'll tackle that as it comes.
You are a leading voice in the Democratic Party. You lead the campaign arm of the state Senate Democrats, and obviously we have the election for governor next year. If he doesn't resign and he wants to run for a fourth term, do you think that Democrats in the state should try to coalesce around a different candidate to try to compete against him in a primary and maybe replace him in the office?
We've always tried to focus on our own elections in the Senate. We've obviously done very well. We have the largest majority that's ever existed in state history for either party. And we've done that by keeping our heads down, recruiting great candidates, supporting great incumbents, and focusing on our elections. We went through many years when the governor wasn't even on our side in these elections. So we've learned how to operate independently of the top of the ticket. And if he still tries to run, I guess there'll be a primary before we even get to November. So there's a lot of steps from here to there, and we'll see where it goes.
Right, quite a bit can happen in a year. That's when the governor will be elected next year. But until then, thanks for joining me, Senate Deputy Majority Leader Mike Gianaris.
Thanks for having me, Dan.